Welcome to John Martin Talks, where we battle ignorance and apathy daily. The growing ignorance of just how special this experiment we call the United States of America is, and the apathy that we can't or won't do anything and everything to save her. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's get right to it. This first story comes from Politico, and it is about impeachment. Impeach 45, as they say. Well, apparently there was and still is quite a bit of consternation within the Democratic Party, specifically the leadership and the rank and file members of the Democratic-controlled House of Representatives. As I say, this comes from Politico. The headline reads, Pelosi clashes with fellow Dems in closed-door debate on impeachment. House Democratic leaders sparred internally on Monday over whether to begin an impeachment inquiry against President Donald Trump, with Speaker Nancy Pelosi and her allies rejecting the call to move forward for now, according to multiple sources. Of course, they seem to always be anonymous sources, certainly if they deal with the president. But let me just say before we get any deeper in this article, let's have no doubt about this. They all want to impeach 45. The debate is not whether or not Donald Trump is worthy of impeachment in the Democrats' eyes. He simply is, because guess what? He committed the worst crime in the history of presidential politics. Yes, I said it. Now, don't tune out until you hear what I have to say, in case you're new to the show. But I've said it before, and if I say it, it bears repeating. Donald Trump committed the worst crime in the history of presidential politics, according to the Democratic progressives. He won. That's the only reason they need to impeach him. The fact that he became Trump 45 is reason enough for them to impeach him. They don't need any other excuse. The rest of it is just that, excuses and cover for why they want to do it. So don't be fooled by this debate, so-called debate they're having amongst House members and Nancy Pelosi being against impeaching President Trump. They're not against impeaching President Trump, as this article will show in just a moment, because of any merit. They're against impeaching those that don't want to impeach President Trump, are simply doing it for political purposes, and they tell you that in this article. So we're going to keep moving. Representative David Saline, Democrat from Rhode Island, don't know if I pronounced that correctly. Old Salty Dog has some trouble with that sometime. Jamie Raskin, Democrat of Maryland, Joe Neguse, Democrat of Colorado, all members of the Democratic leadership pushed to begin impeachment proceedings during a leadership meeting in Pelosi's office. So some of the leadership are actually challenging Speaker Pelosi, not her speakership per se, not yet anyway, but they're challenging her reasoning behind not going forward with an impeachment process. And this is from sources close to Pelosi, supposedly. Pelosi and Representative Rosa DeLauria, Democrat of Connecticut, one of her key allies and a member of the leadership herself, rejected their calls for impeachment, saying Democrats' message is being drowned out by the fight over possibly impeaching President Trump. Drowned out. Exactly what is their message and how is it being drowned out? Maybe they want it to be drowned out. Maybe they should be careful what they wish for and drown out their message, because the message I'm hearing from the Democratic Party, at least the 2020 field, is what is it, like 22 people now or more that are jumped into this thing? Their message seems to be basically kill the baby, let's tax you to death and regulate the economy. It's Obama's fault that we're in such a great economy, not President Trump, which, as I've said before, I hope they're right, because if Obama is responsible for this economy after being out of office for over 2 years, think how great it will be once he's out of office for 8 years. But kill the baby, turn the economy around, which means destroying it. Paying you higher, but get said they want to pay you higher. How are you going to get paid higher? The Republicans are all for paying you more, but they want to do it straightforward and not artificial by a minimum wage. They want to do it by rising all boats with the economy. And of course, the Democrats are clearly for open borders. How does that affect jobs, by the way? Having more unskilled workers storming in, bum rushing or bus rushing the border to the United States. So the Democratic Party is open borders. Take us back to the Stone Age with the Green New Deal. Kill the baby, at least make it comfortable before you do. I mean, no wonder they're worried about their message getting drowned out. They need it to be drowned out. But moving along here, in Democratic Steering Committee policy meeting, Representative Steve Cohen, Democrat of Tennessee, stood up and demanded Trump's impeachment. He demanded his impeachment. Pelosi then countered. This is very key. Listen to this. So Pelosi, this guy Cohen, demanded Trump's impeachment. But Pelosi turns around and says, this is not about politics. It's about what's best for the American people, said a member attending the meeting. Another anonymous source, of course. So is Pelosi admitting here that impeachment is all about politics and not about anything else? I think that's becoming more clear all the time. Impeaching the president is purely political. Now, let me just say before I go any further, I was opposed to impeaching President Clinton because I really believe in the vote. And I believe unless someone just commits a serious high crime or misdemeanor, that it ought to be left up to the voters, period. And that's why I was opposed to impeaching President Clinton at the time. It is all about politics. But here, think about this. If it's truly not about politics, if they truly believe, because the progressives have to believe in fantasy, right? They want you to believe in fantasy. Because if it's truly about President Trump being the puppet of Putin, in other words, he's truly a Manchurian candidate, if they really believe that Donald Trump spent his whole life working up to the point so he could betray his country to the Russians, if they really believe that, now I don't think many of them, if any of them actually believe that, but if they do, then they ought to impeach him today. Today, it would be their duty. So the only reason they're not impeaching the president is because it is pure politics. They got nothing, man. So admission here, keep this in mind. This is admission. I'm going to read this one more time because it's going to be crucial as we go forward in the story. Pelosi supposedly said this, talking about impeachment, is not about politics, but it's about what's best for the American people. Now, do you really believe that? We're going to talk more about that in just a moment. Several members and aides said an impeachment inquiry resolution could be introduced into the House Judiciary Committee in the next several days, spurring more Democratic debate over how to respond to Trump. How to respond to Trump. That's what this is really all about. And remember that once the Mueller report came in, President Trump held a rally. I believe it was in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I know it was in Michigan. Huge rally right after that. And he famously said in there, the Democrats have to make a decision if they're going to keep doing or pursuing this ridiculous bullshit. And he is absolutely right about that. And apparently, many of them are choosing the ridiculous BS road to travel. During the Steering Committee and Policy Committee meeting, Cohen and President Bill Clinton faced impeachment proceedings over sex while Trump is raping the country, Cohen said, according to two sources from the room. Traitor, little Freudian slip there. Cohen later confirmed this. So he said that Clinton's impeachment was just about sex, but Trump is raping the country. Raping the country. And they talk about Trump's tone. I mean, if you listen to the left, their tone is increasingly, they call him for violence on a regular basis. What was that one lady called for Trump to be chopped up, given to the Saudis and being chopped up on Bill Maher's show just this past weekend. I mean, their vitriol, their call for violence is climbing on a daily basis. And it should be addressed, but no one seems to want to do that. Pelosi pushed back on Cohen during the meeting and his assertion that she was simply afraid impeachment would cost her the House majority. Now, this is why I said what I said earlier, emphasize. Pelosi said, according to an aide in the room, this isn't about politics. But didn't she just say it was that it was all about politics? I mean, which is it? She says it's about patriotism. It's about the strength we need to have to see things through. So, Nancy, are you for or against impeachment? It sounds like you're trying to have it both ways. She's scared. What it is, here I can translate to you what Nancy's position is. She's 100% in favor of impeachment, but she's afraid of it. She's scared. If you're scared, just say you're scared. She's scared of the reaction of the American people, as well she should be. Pelosi also tried to calm resistive rank and file members by pointing to the legal victory Democrats won on Monday against President Trump, who tried to block his accounting firm from turning over his financial documents. What she's talking about is there was a judge, and of course, as the president pointed out, it was an Obama-appointed judge, so you can read into that what you want, that said that surely Trump should turn over these subpoenaed documents. Pelosi goes on to say, what we said when we started is that these investigations will yield information to us. Today we won our first case, talking about the case I was just talking about. We've been in this thing for almost 5 months and now we're getting some results. But here's something they failed to mention in this article. The financial documents that this judge said that the president was obligated to turn over are not about Trump during his campaign or Trump being president-elect or President Trump being actual President Trump. They go all the way back to 2011 when Trump was just citizen Trump. Now, what right does the U.S. Congress have to look at a private citizen's financial documents before they even announced they were running for president, let alone if there's some criminal act, and this is the whole thing about like Trump's tax returns. If Trump had anything on his tax returns that were some type of criminal act, don't you know, I'm sorry to say don't you think, but don't you know for a fact they would have come out long before now? So they're just on a fishing expedition. Take this from the old salty dog who knows a thing or two about fishing. They don't care about the truth. They're just looking for campaign pieces against the president. The latest Democratic battle over impeachment began with the White House formally declared that former White House counsel Don McGahn, a key figure in the special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation, so this was Trump's lawyer at the time, would not attend a Tuesday hearing before the Judiciary Committee. Well, they're not, once again, they're not really telling you the whole truth. The Justice Department has already said that nobody that's within Trump's inner circle has to testify before Congress because there's such a thing as executive privilege. President Trump hasn't officially evoked that yet, but he may well, and it's within his rights. But let me just ask you this. What was the purpose of the Mueller report? I mean, all these people they're subpoenaing already testified and with the Mueller report. They complied with the Mueller investigation. All of this has already happened. The problem is the Mueller report didn't give the Democrats what they wanted. And make no mistake, the reason they want the whole Mueller report released, even including the unredacted grand jury stuff, which would actually hurt innocent people, they don't want it because they already have it. Let me back up. They already have pretty much the full report. They can read it anytime they want to. The reason is they don't want the truth. They want to be able to take the report and leak certain information out that they think would be damaging to the president. That's what this is all about. What was the purpose of the Mueller report if it wasn't to put closure on this whole Trump investigation, this whole Russia deal? The Democrats are not satisfied with that, so they want to continue to investigate the president over stuff just to gain political hay. That's all this is about. Back to the article. Billy Bob tells me to get back to the article. This is my psychic sidekick, Billy Bob Bass. If you haven't actually met him yet, he's a bit quiet on the show, but he's got a Twitter handle. It's at Billy Bob Bass 1, and mine is at John Martin Talk. So check it out. But Billy Bob tells me I need to get back to the story. Says here, yet impeaching Trump or even beginning an impeachment inquiry against Trump is a huge risk for Democrats. That's why Pelosi's afraid of it. Pelosi and her allies complain the anti-Trump fervor is overwhelming the Democratic message on their agenda and claim that most of the rank and file is against the move. It's overwhelming their message. The anti-Trump fervor. You think the anti-Trump fervor is overwhelming? They're trying to overwhelm the presidency and the country themselves with it. It's Trump derangement syndrome has just driven these people back, you know what, crazy. The problem is, ladies and gentlemen, they just can't get past the fact that President Trump, as I said at the top of the show, committed the worst crime in the history of presidential politics. he won. They just can't get over it. They got to get rid of the 2016 election. They don't even want to look at it other than the fact that it's about getting rid of President Trump. And let me just tell you something I hadn't talked about in a while. The Democrats are all about, quote, messaging, like they say. It's not about policy. They really, truly believe if they can just get the message right, that you will be duped enough to vote for them again, which is one of the reasons why I left the Democratic Party, by the way, about a decade ago, is because I was a member of the Democratic Executive Committee, and I kept trying to bring some potential solutions to things. They didn't want to hear it. It was all about the messaging. They didn't want to solve problems, and they still don't. In fact, they're worse than ever, and I can tell you because I know how the sausage is made. Democratic leaders also fear that impeaching Trump in the House only to see him acquitted by the Senate will strengthen his hand in 2020. You think? Probably so. But there's a growing chorus of pro-impeachment Democrats. As I told you, they're all for impeachment. And they're being egged on by outside groups that argue Trump needs to be removed from office. And let me just ask this question, and maybe you can help me out, my listeners. Feel free to chime on, you deplorable resistance members, you Citizens for Trump, or those looking at my own Facebook page, John Martin Talks. If you haven't gone directly there, liked it and shared it, I would really appreciate it. But exactly what has President Trump, beyond the fact that he got elected, what has he exactly done that rises to high crimes and misdemeanors? What is it? I can't see anything. Now, there could be plenty of things you disagree with him. You could talk about you don't think he's qualified to be president. The voters disagreed with you. There's a myriad of things that I would accept. I might not agree with, but I would accept as criticism. But impeachment? What has he done that actually deserves impeachment? I can't see that they've produced squat in that area. Anyway, we're going to move on. This is a story coming to you from Politico again. I read some of these publications, as I say, as a public service to you, so you don't have to. Plus, it's kind of like the Sun Tzu about keeping your enemies closer, that kind of thing. But this is from Politico. It says, the great Fox News debate consuming Democrats. And what this is about whether or not these Democrats who are running for 2020 presidential primary should go on these Fox town halls, like the latest one, what is his name, Mayor Buttigieg. I always mess up those names. But it says here, Bernie Sanders and Amy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg, and Kristen Gillibrand, which you might be saying who by now. Anyway, she's polling below like anybody else, hail from all over the country and fall across the spectrum of Democratic politics. No, they don't. They may be from different parts of the country, but they're all about trying to see who is the most progressive. There's not a hill of beans difference between Sanders, Klobuchar, Buttigieg, or Gillibrand, or any of the rest of them for that matter. They're just, the only difference may be who is the most hardcore leftist. That's it. But they're linked at the latest test in the Democratic presidential primary. All decided to participate in Fox News town hall, so they committed that crime, I suppose. But there's a couple of questions I got when I first read this first paragraph. First of all, what is Fox actually becoming? Are they trying to be so fair and balanced that they tilt the scale the other way? Are they absolutely trying to hurt their ratings? Are they trying to even themselves up with CNN and stuff like that? I don't know. I'm not sure. But because they may be getting ratings in the moment, but I think some people are beginning to talk about turning Fox off, which is why you need to be watching shows like John Martin Talks, where you get the unvarnished truth. And think about Chris Wallace, man. I talked about this yesterday, but it bears repeating. Chris Wallace was a cowardly man. Not only did he not ask any tough questions of Mayor Pete, but he didn't even stand up when Mayor Pete basically attacked the network and some of Chris Wallace's colleagues. He let him ramble on about a bunch of nonsense. And keep in mind that Fox has been cut out of the Democratic debates even. So the Democratic Party is giving the old finger to Fox, but Fox, I guess, is bending over and taking it. I can't explain it totally. It perplexes me. All I know is if you want the unvarnished truth, you better listen to old JMT and shows like this, although there isn't really any show quite like this. Whether to appear on the channel has suddenly become a polarizing decision for the sprawling field of Democratic presidential contenders. Of course, Elizabeth Warren declined the town hall invitation a few weeks ago, a month ago, and called the network's Trump-aligned hate-for-profit racket. So I guess old Buttget and Kohlbacher and Bernie, Comrade Bernie, are all about the hate-for-profit racket now, right? Last week, Kamala Harris' campaign, Where's My Willie Harris, and she smoked the ganja, campaign also said wouldn't participate. Still, other Democrats are pledging to go on the network if they only could score an invite. Oh, Paco O'Rourke, what Billy Bob said, it's Beto O'Rourke. Well, hey, if he can change his name, I can change it too, man. I can pander to the best of them. Paco O'Rourke says I want to be on Fox. I want to be on Fox. Pick me. Like, the last guy picked for the basketball team, whatever. Pick me, please. But Gillibrand said, this is what Gillibrand said, man. She said, each candidate will make their own decisions about what they want to do in their own campaigns. But I'm someone who really wants to talk to everybody. What she really means, I just want to talk to somebody. Somebody please recognize me. And that means meeting them where they are, Gillibrand said. She's scheduled to appear on Fox on June 2nd. She went on to say, as she told Politico in the interview here, she said, a lot of Americans watch that network, and those are people whose votes I hope to earn as well. So she hopes to earn these votes as well. Like there's a lot of MAGA hat wearing people that watch Fox that voted for President Trump that are going, man, I'm all for President Trump. Oh, listen to that Gillibrand, man. She makes a hell of a lot of sense. I'm with Gillibrand. Yes, man, you talk about living in a fantasy. But on Sunday night, according to this article here, and it's true, Buttigieg paired questions from Fox News host Chris Wallace facing pushback on abortion and several other issues. Now, I've subsequently watched most, if not all, of the town hall. I don't see much pushback at all from Fox and Chris Wallace myself. But hey, you watch it for yourself and make a decision. Buttigieg said, a lot of folks in my party were critical of me for even doing this with Fox News. He went on to say, and I get where that's coming from, especially when you see what goes on with some of the opinion hosts on this network. And then he went on to slam Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham and all of that kind of stuff. And you know what you heard from Chris Wallace? Crickets, man. I mean, like I hear here at night in my little town of Hawthorne. Crickets, brother. Chris Wallace, man, he was truly the cowardly lion in this, because he would not challenge Buttigieg at all. This guy has not been challenged one little bit. I guess they're scared of him because he checks so many boxes. They're afraid to be called, you're homophobic, you're racist, you're all this kind of stuff, man. I mean, the guy has not been challenged, except by one of the conservative pundits asked him, I just heard this morning, that one of the conservative pundits asked him whether or not, because Mayor Pete said he attended every Lincoln Jackson Day dinner throughout the state of Indiana. Indiana, that's where he's from, hard to keep up with. And the host of the show asked him, said, well, now that you've attended all these, do we need to change the Jefferson Jackson Day dinner's name because they both owned slaves? And Buttigieg said, yeah, we need to basically erase Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson, forget Jackson for just a moment, but Thomas Jefferson should basically be erased from the history books. These are the people that are leading the Democratic Party. Thomas Jefferson erased from our history book. Keep that in mind. But Kohlbacher said in an interview with Politico, if you don't know who she is, she did a town hall a while back. She's the one that had her announcement that she was running for president and how she was going to focus on climate change and global warming during a blizzard where you couldn't even hardly see her for all the snow that was falling. I don't know if that was the smartest way to go, but hey, she did what she did. But Kohlbacher said maybe some of it comes from being in a purple state, talking about willingness to go on Fox, where you have to think about how you're going to reach people. If you're going to make change, if you want to be a proven progressive, keep that in mind, a proven progressive, then you do that by not just talking to the base. Now, I thought that one of Kohlbacher's main things is that she's somewhat of a mainstream Democrat, a moderate person, and it could actually bring people together. But she's talking about a proven progressive. That's why I say all of these people, there's not a hill of beans difference between most of these people. Only their age and their skin color. That's the only real difference, because they're all trying to get left of each other. It's like they're playing musical chairs or some perverted game of Twister where they're trying to get one step ahead of the other person. She's saying it right here. That's one thing about President Trump. He has emboldened these people. If you want to know what they really think, just listen to them. She is saying that she is trying to be a proven progressive. Is that what's going to turn people's minds away from Trump and vote for her because she's a, quote, proven progressive? But Lucinda Gwynn, a Democratic strategist, she said, this is pretty interesting. She said, everyone is trying to make their own electability argument, and we're seeing that through these Fox News town halls, who's accepting them and who is not. For those who have chosen to do it, it's on brand for what they're trying to say. And for those who aren't, it's also on brand for them. So let me ask you, what exactly is the Democratic brand? I talked about that at the top of the show. What is their brand? Is it kill the baby and make it comfortable before you kill the baby? Is it open borders and a welfare state? Everything's free. Come on down and get you some. I mean, what exactly is their brand? And there's some questions that I have at the end of this article. Is this town hall where they're inviting these Democrats, even though the Democrats won't invite Fox to their gig, Fox is inviting them. Is this a plus or minus for the Democrats to go on there? I don't know. I would say, in one way I give them a little bit of props from going into, quote, a hostile audience, although I still think these town halls are pretty well handpicked from what I can see. Is it a plus or minus for Fox? I mean, their ratings in the short term are going up, but how's it going to affect the overall perception that is beginning to develop that Fox is slipping to the dark side? Could, and this is just a question from old JMT, could it be exposing both Fox and the Democrats? Could it be exposing Fox for just being a corporate shill, that they have just fallen victim to ratings and the corporate greed, so to speak? And could it be, here's something the Democrats ought to debate, could it be actually hurting them in the long run because it's exposing their idiocy to a wider audience? More people are going to see them for who they truly are. That's just some of the thoughts I had. We'll just have to stay tuned and see how it all works out. All right, we're going to move on to this next story. Trump demands investigations of opponents draw intensifying criticism. And this is from the New York Times. President Trump escalating demands for investigations into his political opponents have intensified debate over whether his often transparent calls for action by the Justice Department amount to abusing his power to bolster his re-election prospects. So they're saying he's only calling up these investigations to bolster his prospects. Like they're not being bolstered enough by the lunacy of the left. But transparent calls. So, could it be that what they're defining here in the New York Times, as transparent calls, is simply Trump asking for the DOJ? What does that stand for, Billy Bob? Isn't it like Department of Justice? Could it be, and I'm just asking for a friend, could it be that President Trump is simply asking for the Department of Justice to do just that, be the Department of Justice and seek justice instead of all this political nonsense that we spent 2 years on called the Mueller investigation? Could it be that we really need to investigate some high crimes or misdemeanors? Maybe that Trump's, quote, transparency is simply calling for justice. Just a thought. I know that's how I feel. Mr. Trump called in an interview aired on Sunday for investigation into deals in China by Hunter Biden. Now, here's something I mentioned yesterday, and I'm going to mention it again. Britt Hume, after Pete Buttigieg did his town hall, Britt Hume, a Fox commentator, who I actually like, but I didn't care for what he said, he actually challenged the president because he made it sound like that old Pete Buttigieg was doing a better job of facing the press, even though no one challenged him, than President Trump. And President Trump was on Fox that very night for a full hour. Is there a little bit of hypocrisy in that? I don't know. But apparently Mr. Trump is calling into question Hunter Biden, which is one of the sons of his other son. Biden unfortunately died, but Vice President Biden. The Democratic candidate Mr. Trump's advisors believe could pose the biggest threat to him in 2020. Does he really believe that? I don't know. In recent weeks, Mr. Trump has called for inquiries into the Bidens relating to the younger Mr. Biden's business in Ukraine in an effort amplified by Rudolph Giuliani, the president's personal lawyer. So everybody is calling for investigations into various people, including the Bidens, which, you know, children used to be off limits. But of course, now that the Trump children are in the limelight, they're never off limits, right? But Biden's are supposed to be. Nothing to see here, right? 100% it's a disgrace, Mr. Trump said in an interview with Steve Hilton, a Fox News host, when asked if the Biden supposed financial ties with China should be investigated. Now, Hunter Biden is I guess he's kind of a hedge fund manager, stockbroker. His firm, now they were barely even known, literally unknown. His firm got over $1 billion in contracts from China alone, not to mention some of the things that went on in the Ukraine. Now, there's nothing to see here. So this Vice President Biden's son gets a $1 billion contract from China. Oh, and by the way, he just happened to fly on Air Force Two, I think it is, that took the Vice President over to China. This was back during the Obama administration. And Hunter Biden just happened to fly with his dad with a high-profile delegation from America to China. And oh, by the way, while he was there, he just happened to pick up $1 billion. Oh, here, you know, there's a parting gift for you. Glad you came. Here's a little ditty bag, and then there's a check for $1 billion. But there's nothing to see here. Nothing going on. Can you imagine, just for a second, and even you snowflakes out there listening, I know there's some of you out there. Can you imagine if one of Trump's kids actually got a contract from China for $1 billion? I mean, even if they got one for $1, let alone $1 billion, what would the press be doing right now? They would be calling for Senate investigations. Oh, they are, even though they didn't get anything. But you don't hear any investigations called for Mr. Biden. Nothing to see here. It was the latest in a long series of statements by Mr. Trump suggesting, this is the New York Times again, he would like to see criminal investigations of opponents, including, I got a list of them here, including Hillary Clinton. Now, why would they possibly want to investigate Hillary Clinton? Could it be that the Clinton Foundation made over $200 million off of Russia? And during that same time that when Hillary was the Secretary of State under Obama, that she sold off 20% of our uranium to Russia, that little scandal called Uranium One, 200 million plus the uranium. I mean, nothing to see here. Why? I mean, it's crazy to call for investigation of them. How about John Kerry? The president mentioned John Kerry. Have you ever heard of something called the Logan Act? Well, the Logan Act was what they used to basically destroy General Flynn's life, which almost never been invoked, right? It basically is about conspiring, if you will, with a foreign government, a official of the U.S. government. What about John Kerry literally going over and working with the Iranians while they are literally attacking our people right now, literally as we speak? Logan Act, the guy ought to be under the Sedition and Treasonous Act. But no, nothing to see here. No investigation of Kerry needed. And how about the next one on the list? The Democratic National Committee. But hey, why does President Trump even need to do this? Shouldn't Comrade Bernie have called for an investigation after they put the screws to him? I mean, good Lord, man. And it's going on with the article. It says, and it came as the president seems particularly preoccupied by Mr. Biden's candidacy. They just don't understand President Trump. Let me just let you know, man, if you hadn't figured this already, President Trump is a fighter, man. He's a New York street fighter. He's not going to let you throw the first punch, and if you somehow get one in, he's going to counterpunch you like there was no tomorrow. But President Trump is not going to sit back and just let Biden run free. He's going to hammer the dude, man. It's also highlighted the pressure, according to the New York Times here. I love this whole paragraph. It said it's also highlighted the pressure on Attorney General William Barr to navigate between Mr. Trump's demands and Mr. Barr's stated desire after withering criticism over his handling of the special counsel's report, talking about the Mueller report, to reassert the Justice Department's independence from politics. First of all, do you really see Barr under pressure? Man, I mean, I'm sweating more than Barr, and I'm not under any pressure other than it's hot here in Florida. And I can't get the air conditioning turned down cool enough to get me there. But Barr under pressure. I tell you, if he is under pressure, he's one of the coolest that I've ever seen. And then withering. Of course, the withering attack he's gotten. Well, he's gotten a withering, if you want to call it that, attack from the likes of Nadler and Shifty Shift. I mean, I thought I'd look up the word withering just to see if it fits. And according to the dictionary, it says withering, intended to make someone feel mortified or humiliated. Does Barr look mortified, humiliated, intimidated, or under any pressure? I don't know. According to this guy named Jack Goldsmith, who is a professor at Harvard Law School, who was an assistant attorney general during President George Bush's first term, man, that tells you a lot right there. He says, Mr. Goldsmith said, it's a terrible breach of norms for the president to publicly advocate prosecution of his opponents. Well, he was willing to let it go. Remember, he said he wasn't going to pursue Hillary, but then they had their, quote, insurance policy of Stroke and Struck and Page that I say to this day was the Mueller investigation. They fired the first shot, and President Trump, as I said, he's a fighter. He's coming back, man. But DJ's printed, he saw, I love how he says, let me reread this part a little bit. He said, it's a terrible breach of norms. Well, let me just tell you, Donald J. Trump's presidency is a total breach of norms. It is 100% a breach of norms. And guess what? And Billy Bob agrees with me. That's why we voted for him. We knew who President Trump was. This whole idea, well, you unwittingly voted for this. No, I can only speak for me, but I think I can speak for millions of dregs and deplorables out there, man. We knew who President Trump was, and we knew he knew where the bodies were buried, and he knew how to drain the swamp. We wanted the swamp to be breached. We didn't want the same old normal nonsense we've been getting that has led us to the sorry state we find our nation in. We wanted someone who was willing to breach the norms, and President Trump is that guy, and he's that guy in 2020 as well. Who else? Who else if not Trump? So we wanted, yeah, I agree with him. He's a breach of norms, and we need more breaching of those norms. But Goldsmith went on to say, he warned that even if Mr. Trump's calls for investigations are not acted upon, they hope they will be. That would be the problem if they're not. They can nonetheless erode confidence in federal law enforcement. Wow. Like the FBI hadn't been, at the top levels hadn't been eroding confidence already. How does Comey, you just, the whole litany of them, I'm not going to read them all right here right now, but the whole litany of them, man, they've done more to breach the trust than President Trump could do in 10 lifetimes. But Mr. Goldsmith goes on to say, I don't worry that the events of the last 3 years will make every high-profile Justice Department investigation seem, he said, I do worry. Let me back up. He said, I do worry that the events of the last 3 years could make every Justice Department investigation seem crassly political to half the nation. They have been crassly political to half the nation. Really to the whole nation that's really woke. The whole Mueller thing was crassly, to use his word, crassly political. If nothing else, the whole investigative process is 100% political. Even the talk of impeachment, as Nancy Trump, on one hand she said it's not, on the other hand she says it is. It's all politics. That's all it is, man. You know what? I'm starting to smell something reading Mr. Goldsmith's talk here. I smell a swamp rat, brother. I smell a swamp rat. Mark Rozelle, law professor at George Mason University, said Trump and Barr are a dangerous combination. Amen to that. I agree with you, brother. They are dangerous. Probably not in the way you think they are. I think they're a danger to you and your fellow swamp rats. He goes on to say the president doesn't fundamentally understand the powerfully important role he plays in establishing the nature and operations of our constitutional system. Trump is all about the Constitution. Who's defending the Constitution more than President Trump? Many Republicans aren't, by the way. Future administrations, the Democrats, enough said, but future administrations, according to Mr. Rozelle's remarks, he says future administrations will use what he, talking about the president, has done to justify all kinds of behaviors and actions that were once unthinkable. Once unthinkable. So he's breaching norms. He's doing stuff that's unthinkable. Like what? Like draining the swamp. These people are swamp rats, one and all. It doesn't matter what political party they're in. They have one thing in common. They are all swamp rats, and they fear the president. And you know, I've said this before, but I'll say it again. It bears repeating. There is one person out there that these swamp rats fear more than President Trump. Do you know who that is? It's you. It's you, the American people, you deplorables, you dregs, anybody who has an open mind is willing to actually look at what the president has accomplished just in a couple of years, let alone what he could do in 8 years. They are terrified of you because they realize that President Trump one day will be gone. But the American people, that's why they're trying to flood us with all these illegal immigrants, and they may be successful at it. So far, not today. But that's why we do the shows like JMT. But they are afraid of you, my friend. They are afraid that you will continue to drain the swamp even if President Trump is not there. And that is my hope. My hope is he's there as long as he possibly can be, and that the swamp is drained at the end of his 8 years, his 2 terms in office. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the show today as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. I know we've been flip-flopping a little bit about the time. That's going to get better. We're tweaking some things out. You will see some steady progress on the show over the course of time here. Thank you so much for listening. Please go directly to John Martin Talks. Like it, share it with others. As I say, not everybody can be a fighter. Billy Bob and me are fighting. We're going to fight as long as we got breath in our lungs. But everybody can be a supporter. So thanks for your support. Thanks for helping us stay in the fight. And over the next few days, I'm going to give you some ways that you can help me even further. But between now and then, as I always say, from my family, my heart to yours, have a blessed day.